What is happening, my gurus? I hope all is well. I hope everybody is having a good Friday and a great start to the weekend, which I'm looking very forward to. The weather is shining here in Durban. I'm super stoked to get the weekend started. But before we do, I just want to obviously quickly do a little bit of an update of what we saw this week and what I think we can expect over the weekend. Now, full disclosure, this is an unprepared video because what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to go through the charts and analyze them with you in a way that you can see how I would normally analyze them, in my own time, and sort of just get you inside my mind so that you can see how I look at the charts and you guys can do too. So before we get started, there's a few things that I obviously just want to chat about. One of the main things that I want to discuss is obviously regulation, which we had spoken about a little bit. I did a whole write-up in the channel, which I hope you guys read, and I hope that you guys enjoyed that as well. Thank you for those of you that did take the time to read it. I really enjoyed writing it, and I think it's really important to sort of come to grips with what we're dealing with when it comes to regulation. Now, on the note of regulation, the funny thing is that for so long, so many people thought that regulation would be the absolute end of crypto and we would see a massacre off the back of regulation, which is obviously proving itself to be untrue. Now, whether or not, I can go into a tangent on a conspiracy theory as to why I believe this is all happening, something along the lines of an entire war being construed so that they can collapse a current financial system to replace it with another, whether by war or by inflation or whatever kind of metric they need to support a narrative that would allow them to do what they want to do in order to progress with their control and their current control and manipulation of the financial system. All I mean by that is, at the end of the day, and I've said this before, if you have something that's putting bread on your table, you will do whatever it takes to keep that thing alive for as long as possible. But as soon as you start to realize that it's the end, you're going to start making inroads and other plans to ensure your survival. And I think that what that means is that there is a current race. It's a race that nobody's talking about because everybody's so hyper focused on either a pandemic, a war, inflation, CPI. You name it, there's a myriad of things that you can get swept up in if you enjoy geopolitics and macroeconomics. It is endless. The list is endless. But truth be told, at the end of the day, when you are looking at a change in a global economic financial system, these changes need to be enacted in such a way that supports the 1%. And if it's going to support the 1%, then best be sure that the 99% better be distracted, because even if 5% of the 99% are hyper focused on what you're doing and they figure out what you're doing, it's going to make it really difficult for the 1% to make those changes. And like I said, underlying all of this, there is a current race for supremacy. It's a supremacy both on a geopolitical front, it's supremacy in the macroeconomics. For example, the petrodollar. I'm sorry to be throwing all these terms around. For those of you that aren't following or haven't been following macroeconomics, these are terms that I definitely recommend you come to terms with. These are terms that I think you should understand, and I think that everybody should know and at least understand what the impact of the petrodollar economy is, and why a country like China, or why a communist conglomerate between Russia and China would want to shift the powers that be so that it's more balanced. You have to understand that up until now, the entire world has been hyper reliant on the greenback. 80% of the greenback isn't even in America. Most of the dollars in print around the world are not even inside America. That goes to show you the level of supremacy that they have. Anyway, long story short, I'm not going to get too heavy into this. For those of you that do want more of that kind of content, you can let me know. I'd love to do it. I research this all the time. I've always been, super interested in sort of the bigger picture. And like I've said in the start, we're watching a chess game where we can only see, a fraction of the board. And one of the things that I really enjoy is trying to uncover as much of that board as possible. So basically, when it comes to regulation, again, like I said in the chat, their job is to protect the masses. Their job is to make sure that new industries that pop up that are changing the world are not going to allow for criminals and thieves to basically scam people out of their money and defraud people out of their life savings, because that's what the government's there for. So, they can't have anyone else doing that. They want to make the money from that. So, long story short, that's what regulation's about, and that's what they're going to be looking to do. And I think that at the end of the day, it's prudent to be aware of the fact that all of these things are being done to support a certain agenda, whether we like it or not. And that's just the long and the short of it. And I think that regulation is actually going to help mass adoption. There's no ways that Bitcoin's going to get to 100K as it stands. There's just no ways. Most of the money in this thing is retail, and most of it is people who've bought Bitcoin, in 2013, 2014, 2016, wherever it was. Most of the Bitcoin is owned by the general populace. And now we're sort of seeing a shift into that. The banks are getting way more heavily weighted into their exposure of Bitcoin, etc. So the only way that we're ever going to get to $1 million Bitcoin is through institutional adoption. It is absolutely the only way. And what do I mean by institutional adoption? What I mean by that is banks offering exposure to mom and pops and grannies and uncles and people who would otherwise never know how to go and download Binance and do KYC and get set up to buy Bitcoin. It needs to be as easy for them as going to the bank and putting some rands, dollars, euros into a savings account. They need to be able to go to their banker and say, right, I'd like to please get some exposure to Bitcoin. That's what's going to change the game. We're going to see more ETFs. We're going to see spot ETFs. We're going to see more futures exchanges popping up. As we saw in the news, the new president of South Korea, which is by far the world's largest crypto economy, that guy's a bull. He's an absolute Bitcoin bull. This guy has been punting for not only just regulation but adoption throughout the industry over there for many, many years. So we're going to see an explosion in Bitcoin, and this leads me to the bomb that I was mentioning I'd like to drop. I know that it seems like the picture is doom and gloom at the moment. I know that we've got a few bears in here that reckon we are at the end of the world. But I'll be honest with you, even though we've seen a double top, and what all a double top means is here, reject, the classic Batman ears, I don't see this as the end of crypto. In fact, I see this as the beginning of crypto. I see this as a movement into the future that we've always dreamed of as people who enjoy blockchain and believe in the power of blockchain. And what do I talk about when I say the power of blockchain? I mean a system that is transparent and albeit centralized through central bank digital coins, which I'll get to. I'm talking about a system where people can now take more control over their finances, whether it's through DeFi, wallets, whatever it is. People can become more in control of their personal finances, and I think that that's what blockchain is going to do. It's also going to allow us to move into a system where this whole hyperinflationary model of printing money is also going to be addressed and needs to be removed, because at the end of the day that can't continue. We all know that it's the white elephant in the room. It's the thing that no one's talking about, and they keep kicking the can down the road. They're doing this because, again, like I said in the beginning of the video, they're trying to keep a system that's been feeding them alive for as long as possible, because they know it's coming to an end. Regulation is the start of that. That bill that was signed was the beginning of that. And that Yellen woman, who for me, frankly, is a dinosaur. I don't know how she's supposed to regulate a technology that came out once she was already a great-grandmother, most likely. I'm not sure how that all works. But all I know is that we are now in the midst of global mass adoption. Early adoption was 2020. Up until 2020, you would have been considered an early adopter. From 2020 to now, it's now into the rise of a curve. In fact, let me see if I can find, just bear with me here, adoption curve. Just to show you guys what it looks like. 5 stages of adoption. Here we go. Let's see if we can get a bit of a picture on that. I might need to actually just search the image. Sorry that I'm Googling images here. Like I said, it's not prepared show today. Today I'm going through the motions with you guys so that you can sort of see what we're looking at here. Here we go. This is a good one. Adoption innovation curve. This applies to most technology in the world. Up until 2020, we were all considered innovators. If you were you were basically an innovator. You would have been considered an innovator. The early adopters came in through 2020 when the global financial system went through what it went through the pandemic, and forced a lot of people to rethink about what they own and the assets that they own and how susceptible those assets are to black swan events. That's what created this. Around here is, Tesla $1.5 billion into Bitcoin, etc., etc., etc. Early majority is where we're about to enter. We're about to enter into this phase. Late majority will be in the next couple of years, where you're going to see Bitcoin as an everyday part of life. There are going to be countries that are going to allow you to pay your rates and taxes in Bitcoin, etc., etc., etc. Your El Salvador's, people are going to follow that model. And of course, this is going to be, Bitcoin's going to reach $1 million, and this is where your really, really late adopters are going to come into the fold. I'm not going to get too much into how I believe Bitcoin is going to be the future currency reserve and all of that kind of stuff, but all I can say is that My own personal hypothesis here is that we're about to see the greatest year that crypto has ever seen. Now, in terms of inflation, in terms of global macroeconomics, I don't know where it's going. Many investors are pulling out of their their exposure to stocks, and they're moving more into bonds and other fixed assets, or otherwise gold, or commodities, etc., etc., etc. But I don't see that necessarily being the only play that's available here. I think that we're also being offered a lot of opportunities to see where we lie with our Bitcoin portfolio, with our crypto portfolio, and where we can look to sort of add more exposure. I'm personally not buying at these levels, but I'm looking to see what happens. I don't necessarily see that being the case. I mean, I know that there's a CME gap around here, who knows? We could come back down to here, like I've said many times before, a death wick from here, and then continue up, like we saw with the stock market in the pandemic. So, that's pretty much the situation. And I'm not getting too heavy into technical analysis here. We're just looking at, the overall picture. We can see here we've had a double top, okay, which is normally quite a bearish sign. It normally precedes a bear market, but who knows? Who's to say? I mean, we're about to see mass global adoption as well. If they're going to regulate it, they're going to allow more money to flow in securely, and that's all it means. Let them create the central bank digital coin. Let them create all of the CBDCs they want. DeFi will explode. Privacy tokens, like I've mentioned many times before, will explode. They can't shut this thing down. The beast is already too big. Their only move now is to try and control the beast as much as they can. And I've said this before, all they are interested in is making sure that they're making the money that you're making. I always laugh about this. It's the funniest saying. They say, nah, your internet money is not real. Your magic internet money is not real. But I want some. You must give me. So it's all ridiculous at the end of the day. I mean, I think that we're at a place where things are almost comical, and my heart goes out to the people that are suffering as a result of this mass global manipulation. People in Ukraine, civilians, innocent people are suffering as a result of these massive geopolitical chess games. And that's what's unfortunate to me. And I think that, DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, community tokens, hyper-focused, hyper-reliant communities is the future. And, I don't think we even need to worry about what the Bitcoin price is for that, because blockchain technology far supersedes the price of Bitcoin. CZ, the CEO and founder of Binance, was once asked about, investing into Bitcoin and Ethereum and etc. And he said he doesn't care what the price is. He said he doesn't invest in crypto, he invests in the technology. And that's ultimately what this is all about. And I think that as we go further and deeper into the future, we're going to see more and more applications for this. Not to mention the applications in terms of corruption and smart contracts to work against those kinds of things in government and stuff. So I really think that we're going to become more autonomous. They're going to try and control it as much as they can, but the future's heading one way. And that's why they're doing what they're doing, is because they're trying to keep this thing alive as much as possible. So let's do a little bit of technical analysis before we do move on. We're now moving into a sideways market. I'm sorry to say this, it's the fact. Here's your range. And that's probably what we're going to see. Again, that's let me just fix the range there. That's pretty much what we're looking at. I mean, I don't really see us busting out of this range anytime soon, especially not with like the inflation data that's going to come out next month. And just so that this whole pump that we saw off the back of the regulation and the Yellen and the whatever, and especially this pump that we saw yesterday, hold on, that's this pump over here, this one over here, that was off the back of good CPI data, aka no inflation. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, there's definitely inflation. They just haven't included it into the numbers yet. And I think that when they do come to look at the numbers maybe next year, where they look at the month-on-month inflation, those numbers will change. And whether or not they're going to try and taper inflation even more, who's to say? But one thing I can tell you is that they are definitely making inroads and moves to try and stifle the growth of something that they know is inevitable. And that could mean that we range here for the next couple of months. Who knows? I personally think that we might even come up to test, come back to this trend line, come up to test, come back to this trend line before going out in the summer. I'm not too sure. I can't say. It's very difficult to call. But one thing's for sure, we are obviously in a sideways market with a downward trend. It just is what it is. I'd like to see what happens when we do come back to test this blue trend line. I think it's necessary. You can see we've sort of had one area of a test here. We've had another sort of test over here, and we'll probably need another one to confirm it again. So that'll be interesting for me. This is a massive zone of support, and I do want to also confirm that we do have, sorry about that, we do still have this CME gap. So let's just take a look at the CME gap that's there. I think it's also, you'd be silly to sort of ignore that and say, nah, we've gone too far, we'll never come back to close it. I think that it's very possible that we could see a wick down, capitulate the last of the retailers who just don't believe in Bitcoin properly. I think one thing about 2020 to 2022 is that there were a lot of people that came in looking for a quick buck. And those were the people that effectively destroyed the growth of the bull market. Those are the people that were liquidated by the whales. That was easy whale fodder. You had people come in who want a get rich quick scheme, and they were leveraging their lives on these exchanges like Binance, 100x long on Bitcoin. I'm not surprised they got liquidated to high heaven. But it is the fact that we do have a gap here. And the odds are it's going to need to be closed. So, whether or not that means we come back down here and, like I said, a little wick, close the gap and then continue up. This could also be off the back, we tend to see these sort of like death wicks off the back of like really heavy data or black swan events or whatever the case is. So it could be that, this sort of, we see this inflation data come out next month, or the rate hike and whatnot, and maybe a further escalation in the war. That gives us a little bit of a wick, closes the gap, and then continues out. Bitcoin has a life of its own, and I can assure you that although Bitcoin is susceptible to the stock market, which we'll get into now, I do think that it has a life of its own, especially because people like us believe in it, and people like us will continue to buy and trade Bitcoin, whether or not it's in speculation. It will continue to happen. So you can sort of see what's going on here. The stock market had a really, really heavy wick down here. It came down to previous levels of support. You can sort of see that. I mean, we can even pop a support level in there. You can see the previous time that it came to check there before moving on up. It's come now to do the same thing. Effectively, this trend line could be deleted. I won't delete it because it's going to obviously form part of the resistance when the stock market does want to eventually come up. It's going to need to break that line to continue up into an uptrend. But like I said, guys, I'm not too sure. I can't call the future here. I can't call it, call these things in advance. But I do think that it's smart to sort of sit back and understand that we could be in the midst of massive emotional manipulation that's trying to get the retail out the market so that they can make sure that they're the ones in control of everyone's cryptocurrency, if the new game is crypto. Anyway, guys, I'm not going to ramble on for too much longer. I wanted to just sort of get into this, give you guys where my head's at, look at it from, sort of a different perspective, not get too heavy into the technicals, talk a little bit more about where we're at, what we can look forward to, and, what could be potentially coming for us in the future. I will obviously on the other side of the weekend do a more technical video where we can get into the technicalities of the chart and see what it looks like. But heading into the weekend, let me just quickly open up the chart one last time. I'll also open it up with 4 hourly. You guys can see we're obviously in a massive triangle. For those of you that have been following the chart, we're in a massive triangle here. It's been spotted for quite a while, like I said, and I don't see this being a triangle that's going to break downwards. It could very well, like I said, break downwards, do the wick, and then continue up. But I don't see us going into a further sort of crypto winter bear market. We're already in crypto winter. Link is $13. There are some prices on the charts there that are an absolute joke compared to where they were. But this is where people make life-changing money. The people that have the balls to buy at these levels are the people that really make it, because they've got the conviction to say, I believe in this thing and I didn't need a get-rich-quick scheme. I'm believing in this because I believe in it for the long term. I'm buying this because I want to be involved in this movement. And at the end of the day, when Bitcoin is $1 million and your 0.1 Bitcoin is worth $100,000, albeit $100,000 could buy you a loaf of bread at that point with inflation, but who knows? It's all going to depend on what the reserve currency is and how the global geopolitical status quo is, because that's all going to have to do with the petrodollar. I mean, the entire stock market / crypto market is all predicated on the dollar. Yesterday, Bitcoin made an all-time high in Russia. Think about that for a second. It made an all-time high in Russia. In a country where Bitcoin is not trading against the US dollar, it made an all-time high. There's a lot to think about on that. Just checking out sort of where we're looking at with the momentum oscillators. This is the RSI. For those that don't know what RSI is, a stochastic index. Please do your homework and check this indicator out. It's super important for those of you that don't have it on your chart, that are looking to chart these things. bit of interesting price action going on down here. I mean, again, it hasn't come down to test these levels. You can see here it tests, here it tests, here it doesn't test. So a little bit wary of that. It's trying to sort of move back up. We need the blue and the red to sort of separate, and for the blue to come up for me to get bullish again. But the fact that we are down here in the oversold region mean that we should see upward movement and some upward pressure as well. A lot of money, a lot of Bitcoin was moved to Coinbase with short positions. So just in terms of your on-chain analysis, we could see more down. I mean, there's also looking a little bit like a bit of a head and shoulders to me. I'm not too sure if it's a bit loose to call it that, but it is interesting, and we could see a bit more down before up. I'm not too sure. I'm not going to try and time the market. I'm looking for areas where we can trade. These are the kind of trades that are worth taking. These sort of trades, these candles are dangerous. They're very volatile, very dangerous candles to trade, and you can often lose money in these trades because, if you think you're seeing it, rest assured many other whales are seeing it as well. And they're in a position to manipulate the market. So, they're in a position to manipulate the market, and they can, and that's what they continue to do. So, gurus, I wish you guys all a fantastic weekend. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please excuse any sort of quality issues. I am moving over to a new recording software. So yeah, just give me some feedback on that. And as always, if you guys have watched this far into the video, if you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and pop a comment on the video to get that engagement and that reach flowing for me. Have a fantastic weekend, gurus.